and she'll be giving us the presentation on the Hoxsie House and their plans for the Heritage Society to move it to another location and tell us of its historical significance.
You can't stay here. La la. So you want this whole thing I passed out, first off, shows you the circle in yellow. You can see that yellow, what Leonard S. Hoxsie laid out when he came across the waters here in 1864 with his family on the frozen ice from Northport and made this whole area all laid out so that, you know, acme could be acme. Another part of the family, a woolen mill they had on the shore there. And then the map under behind it shows you exactly where it was here in Acme, where the woolen mill was. Can you see him okay?
Okay, but what's this river?
That's the creek, the Acme Creek, that went from the bay here. And they also had a dam. And Leonard S. Hoxsie started the sawmill here, the first sawmill. Therefore, lumber, therefore this house, which is terrific. I mean, they were smart, because upstairs in the one bedroom, they have in the middle this cheaper pine, because it threw rugs down, and the nicer wood around
the edge.
So, you know, they knew how to handle that wood. A lot of the wood from here went to Chicago, so.
Where did they get the wool?
That's a good question.
The wool was bought from local farmers and from downstate as well, and they
That's Dave Hoxsie, by the way.
they had a very, very high what's the word I'm looking for, a standard for the wool, because they made the high textile wool and it went to Europe for suits and dresses and stuff like that, and it was a short-lived woolen mill because people started to undercut them downstate, and that was a faster route throughout the St. Lawrence Seaway and get to Europe. So it only lasted 4 or 5 years, but it was really something in its day.
Right. That was 1884, and this is 1890. That's
So what is the plans for the house?
Oh,
I mean, does it belong to, who does it belong to?
Well, right now it belongs to the township, but we're prepared, the Historical Society is prepared to purchase it from the township.
We have a purchase agreement.
Pending, we have to move it because of the shoreline project, which is through the state or the DNR. This was not part of that project, so it's federal money, so this has to be gone or destroyed.
Yeah, which is so sad, isn't it?
And we thought, well, it's one of the only artifacts that we have left in our township with any history to it. So we thought, wow, what a travesty to bulldoze this. So a developer was genuine enough to offer us a piece of property in the new development, which is going to be the Grand Traverse Center, or Grand Traverse Village. And
Town center.
we're waiting on that ground them to break ground. So we're going to have kind of the focal point of the new development up there.
Where is that going to be?
It's going to be right up on the hill, right across from
Trevino's.
the Grand Traverse Resort.
Yeah,
They're on 72 then?
Yes.
And actually, the site that they want to put this house on, we'll be able to see Northport from the third
Yes,
floor.
it's gonna be great.
All right.
See both.
Sally was here from the beginning. Sally was part of, she was the one that helped us work with the township and getting it at least saved. It was like to the last hour, the last day, the last minute. And she was there during that time, fighting for it too. And then here comes the guy, Steve Smith, says, I've got a piece of property for you. Wow, Savior, wonderful. But then we have to move it, of course, but it's still a nice spot. It's gonna be a nice historic society with a museum with a kitchen in the basement where people can have community meals and stuff, and people can gather for like showers. And then during the film festival, the rooms upstairs could be a donation where they could stay in these beautiful rooms. I mean, woo!
So will this be your historical society
Correct.
meeting place and
Yeah.
stuff? Wonderful.
We gotta be here now.
Our goal is to have a commercial kitchen so that we can have fundraising events for other people and stuff like that, weddings possibly.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there need help too, so you know, that's what societies are supposed to do. I know I read up that you guys do things that help out the community. That's what we like to do too. So, one interesting thing about, you see the pictures up here? This is Bertha Voss Hoxsie. Oh, Yes.
Hoxsie.
Yeah, she's what the school is named after. She, her husband has loved her. She was a wonderful, now, you know this story too, right? Her first husband died, then she went down and worked at a hospital and met Mr. Voss when he was sick and took care of him basically, and he fell in love and then he built the school in her name. And it was such a sweet story, you know? She was a beauty. And she walked around town with a picnic basket and give out cookies to people and very sweet lady. Yes.
Where was town exactly?
Town was right here.
This is it?
This was town, before the highway ruined it, you know, 57. In fact, Miss Acme, Valerie Strong, that was the year she won Miss Acme. And that's the year they made the road 4 lanes. And then Mackinac Bridge, she was the, we call that MC in the 50 years, after 50 years she was the MC, she became Miss Michigan, Valerie Strong was Miss Michigan. So, yeah, this was town, had all kinds of cool stuff. And Charlotte, she lived right here, this young lady here, and she remembers all the stores. There was the Stony Hollow Hut, there was,
Compton's Hardware?
yes,
Hardware, beauty shop.
beauty shop, all these, yeah, right around, across the street. There's even a place that didn't last long, it was called the Chicken Pot Pie Store. It wasn't here very long, they had chicken pot pies.
So what was this house last used for?
It was used as, people lived here, the Coes, and they had cabins out there. All the
Right.
cabins are gone, and they rented the cabins. And
Did they
loved the
rent
house.
rooms in the house too, or?
I think the Coes did, their family lived here, but the family, wow, remember when the road 73 blew up, everybody remember that when they had the eruption, and it was on the news? When the gas, how the gas pipes broke under the ground, how'd that work exactly? There was an eruption on 72.
That was fracking back before.
It was before.
It was
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was Amical oil.
Amical
A
oil.
gas line ruptured
Yeah.
and came out through the aquifer and
That was
Just-
Williamsburg, and
actually tore out 72.
Yeah.
Really?
In
And
1973.
the whole village of Williamsburg was evacuated for months.
And Acme. Really?
And
Acme
Acme too.
was too, they kept
Yeah.
testing the water, because we
Yeah.
were on flowing well over here.
Right.
They used to come down and check the water.
What year was that?
73. 73.
My husband had this.
They built this house, we
I
don't know
think
how
in
long, probably a
40s.
few months only, they built it. It was like a spec home back in the 1980s. Yeah. They had another house on the hill where Bertha lived, but that was her son's house. They weren't here very long in this house, but they built it. So that alone, and then the Merles lived in it. Was it the Merles next that were here, that family?
What's that?
The Merles, who was the second family that lived here? The Merles, weren't they?
Miro.
Merles, and they were a big family around here for years too, and then, yes, and then there was, Kankas lived here, were merchants, and merchants is a big name around here. And Bernallis, who were related to Kowalski's, who used to own the Stony Hollow Hut and the, other thing,
Acme TV.
Acme TV. So there's a lot of families that been here.
Well, I'm just looking at the wonderful woodworking.
Thank you, I think it's terrific too.
And is all this
This is all original.
all original? Look out there, look at the ceiling in the other room.
Yeah. Now that used to be the dining room in there. That used to be the dining room. It was with the
You know
chandelier.
the lumber guys, Perry Hanna was obviously the biggest lumber
Yeah.
man in the whole state, and that house was all brick.
Yeah.
And they picked on him so much
For that.
about being a lumberman, they sided it with wood.
Now, are they going to take down these trees? I mean,
Now that tree, that's the third largest willow tree in Michigan.
is that gonna go?
No.
No, it just has to be trimmed.
We gotta move, it's gonna be trimmed on that side, we're gonna move the house this way.
The chimney's coming off, and then
The porte cochere and the chimney.
Yeah, that has to come down.
Nobody in this, in the Congress, or nobody, none of your representatives or anybody could do anything about this?
To overcome this.
It's just appalling.
yeah.
It is.
I was just wondering before I
Can
got
we
darker,
see
if you
the
could tell us
house?
what's on the map.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just put these up here for this was a picture of the Acme woolen mill.
Let's see that.
This is, everybody's saying in front of, that one doesn't work anymore, so it's not. That's the Acme woolen mill.
We do have a Facebook page with
Here,
lots
lots
of.
of around.
Yeah,
do you?
Yeah,
What's the
Acme
page?
Heritage
What's your
Society.
Facebook?
Acme
Heritage
Heritage
Society.
Society.
Okay.
We just posted about you guys coming today, in fact.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And up here, I would like to have Dave talk about these family people. Dave, can you talk about your,
This is 4 generations of my family, and Leonard S. is the guy that built this house that you're in today, and my grandfather is right there. And his father was John Hoxsie, and then Alonzo was Leonard's son, and he didn't want to be involved in business. He hated the idea of being in the sawmill business, so he ran away and joined the Union forces in Gettysburg, and went and fought for 4 years and came back here and got the land that I live on for doing that. And I still live in his house.
and show me how this is the rest of his family here.
That's my grandfather in World War I, and that's John Hoxsie, and then, Dennis Hoxsie and John Hoxsie. The other interesting picture, we're gonna go this one.
That's what you talked, this one over here in the middle.
Yeah, the other one he's got right here.
This family is also my family from the other side of my family. These are the first white settlers in Kalkaska County, and they built the first farm on the county line at Baggs Road, and their farm is still there today. And that's William Copeland.
When was
in
that?
1850.
The Armstrongs must have been pretty close to that time. My dad used to stay there at that farm when he rode it a stallion, a Persian stallion, and when he had 2 mares for service, he stayed there overnight.
That's interesting. Is that Baggs Road area?
Yeah, that little stone, cobblestone house,
Some more on
you go straight out,
Yeah, you know that
and that
house.
little, I always thought it was such a pretty little house.
Yeah.
But the stones aren't bigger than your hand.
And that's just north on
Yeah, right.
Baggs.
It-
Wow.
No, if you went right straight out, yeah, 72, you go straight out just before you look.
Right, I
you'll
noticed,
right
yeah,
inside.
pretty cool
Yeah,
spot.
it's really pretty.
Well, and this is Leonard S. Hoxsie with the Prey family. They were relatives of his,
And they were all from Williamsburg.
yes.
There's 5 generations there.
And that park in Williamsburg is called High Prey Park. That's relatives here. And there's, what do I have over here?
That's the mill pond.
This is the mill pond.
You know, did they float any logs in across the bay, or did they bring?
At the
them
coal
all?
docks, didn't they do it at the coal docks?
Yeah, I believe they did.
Coal.
There's also a, I was at one of these type of events, and we have to, Dorothy and I wanted to research it a little more. There was the first ever lawsuit in Michigan that went to the Supreme Court over water rights was in Acme. And I have a feeling it was our family. Arguing with somebody else in the family. It was over the flow of the Acme Creek, which is not a huge flow of water to begin with, but it couldn't support 2 businesses, it could support 1.
So say again where the logs came from, please?
Well, they were brought in by horses. You know, this whole area was just forest.
Okay,
So,
came this way.
yeah, they just came from, we call it the plains
Yeah.
or Bunker Hill area. They were transported down here by small railroad gauge trains and horses.
And then, didn't they go out by boat at Dock Road?
Yeah.
The dock road.
Yeah,
coal
because
dock.
there's still,
Yeah.
if you dive under there, there's still.
That last piling's gone.
Oh,
It's
but
gone.
my husband used to bring up that wood and it was like petrified.
Yeah.
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 There was coal there too, when they brought the coal in, there's coal pieces there too, so.
The Indian gill nets are still out there. The wooden stakes from the nets are still down here and still off at Dock Road.
We had
And those are 100 years old.
We had commercial fishing here too.
Right.
For years, commercial fishing and, potato farming became a big one before the cherries came because the wood was all gone. So they had to have money somewhere, so they did potatoes,
Right.
lots of potatoes.
Yep, the Morrison family and our family, well, everybody started out
Andrews and all
in
that.
potatoes.
Then they had the cherry trees come in.
Was this a farm then?
There was a,
Farmstead here or?
There was a farm across the street, wasn't there, Charlotte, where you lived? Wasn't there a farm with cows and all that stuff that walked across and went to the bay?
Yeah, you mean where Marjorie and I used to.
Yes.
Margie's dad had cattle, and he used to
Oh,
put
they
them
go over
across
here.
the road in the field.
Yes.
And then Marjorie and I would have to bring them back, so Marjorie'd stand on this end of the highway, and I would be up on this, and come boss, come. And
Yeah.
get across the road, because their farm was right over here, right next door
So
over
there was a
here.
farm right here.
Wow.
It must not have been a whole lot of traffic.
There wasn't that. Not like now. No.
No.
My father grew up in the house I live on 72, and 72 was a 2-track in 1925. And he said when a car went by, you ran out and waved and stared.
Yeah.
And you probably knew him, but sometimes you didn't.
Yeah.
When they thought she was crazy, covering trees up so you can have cherries a little early, back then.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Covering cherries up early, so. they-
My cousin Dennis has a tree farm up here, a cherry farm with, he has his trees in tunnels, so he can control the climate a little better. He has less frost and less pesticide use, and it's still being proven, I guess. So far, so good.
We have another, Donna Saylor is here, she's part of our group. Her daughters became the Cherry Queen, and her 2 years ago, her other daughter became Cherry Queen, but her husband has been a cherry farmer family. How many generations now?
He's the 5th generation. His family came in 1856 and started, well, the logging and then potatoes, and then in the 20s and 30s is when fruit got started in this area. Primarily cherries. It became a big industry, but yeah, he's been here for 5 generations.
Donna's family has a park named after their family,
Saylor
Sailor Park, which is a
Yes.
beautiful place down on East Bay.
They owned about 1,200 feet of, when they settled here, you got your property like the Hoxies did back from the federal government at the time, and they were able to acquire about 1,200 feet of frontage along the bay, but they were trying to farm, and that was worthless sandy ground. And so, but even, it's really cool because it's even back then when life was about survival. How are we going to get through the winter?
Yes.
These cold northern Michigan winters, but even back then, they knew that people needed to have some recreation and a place to go together and have picnics and get together with your families, just like we struggle to do these days, is to get people together. We're so busy, different kind of busy than what they had, but even back then, they knew that that property that was worthless for making an income from, but it was still valuable for generations to be able to enjoy the view. They had sunsets like we have today that they still enjoyed back then. And so they donated it to Acme Township in Yuba to be able to be used as a public park forever.
There's lots of pictures
That was
that
the
we have.
stipulation. It was,
Right.
yes, it was given, and it was, we hear that it cost $1 to transfer a deed from the family who owned it to the township.
But there's a lot of pictures we have of very nice picnics with families on Sundays, mostly weekends.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
nice pictures of that.
But it's very cool. And then right there at Yuba, back in those same early years, the Hoxies came here in the Kalkaska area in 1850. And in 1852, from the records we can find, there was a white family, white people came through the Yuba area from the north, and the first white child died in Yuba. And there's still a little cemetery plot.
Yes.
William Leith is his name, and he died there, and that cemetery plot is still being cared for by one of the other Pulsifer families who came
About the same time.
1956, 1958, or 18 rather, back in those same times. What is really cool about this area, from Kalkaska all the way to the bay, is that it represents what was going on in this country. There was a movement from families migrating from Europe to come to the United States, this wilderness, And as they started moving across the country to move west, some of them got this far and were able to
Make it.
a
Make a
living
money.
off of the
Make a money.
logging or the fishing or the milling or whatever they were able to do. This was a beautiful spot even back then. And then some went ahead and weren't satisfied here, so they moved on. But in the little Yuba area,